Okay. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We have closed captions enabled, so you should be able to turn those on or off if you need them. Um, yeah, my name is Kelly McCarthy. I am an herbalist and a somatic practitioner. Um, I'm here on Abenaki land in Vermont. I have been working with clients for about 10 years, doing one-on-one herbal and somatic consultations. And I love working with people on their mental health, digestive health. I work with a lot of queer people. I also do small groups where we like have some more accountability for, kind of taking care of ourselves and staying on track. There's, oh, the electricity. There's a small group that is starting at the end of April called Collective Consultations on my website, atticapothecary.com. You can read more about that if that's of interest. Um, yeah, so about half of my work is one-on-one client stuff, and the other half of my job is teaching. And I love teaching and talking about herbs. And I'm really excited to just talk about sleep. Um, at the end of, well, actually tomorrow I'll send the recording out, and you'll also get a handout with like pretty much everything I'm gonna go over. So there's no, you can just like sit back, let this wash over you, take notes if you want, but really it's all written down. So you can just relax, make yourself comfortable. I'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. I am not great at like keeping up with the chat during a Zoom class. You're welcome to put stuff in if you want, but I'll ask for another Q&A time towards the end. So very glad you're here. Um, okay, so there are so many reasons that people have trouble sleeping, and the more that you can understand for yourself kind of what's going on, what's the root of the issue, the more well-suited the herbs can be. I would say what I see is that far and away, the biggest reason that people are having trouble sleeping is just like stress, worry, like there's been a buildup of stress and tension throughout the day. But some other really common reasons that people will have trouble sleeping is there is body pain at night that's keeping you from falling asleep. Um, Sometimes there's low blood sugar happening in the middle of the night that can kind of like reach a certain point and your body wakes you up. Sometimes it is related to hormonal changes, whether that is puberty or postpartum or perimenopause. Um, and sometimes it's actually like, a chronic stress issue. So not so much that like I had a stressful day and now I can't sleep, but it's that you have been going through a period of chronic stress and your cortisol levels are disrupted. And we'll talk a little bit more about cortisol in a moment. But those are some of the main things I see. And I just want to spend a little, well, I guess there's one other is that there hasn't been like enough energy expended throughout the day. So for those of us who like sit on a computer a lot, we like didn't get enough movement and activity out. And so at the end of the day, there's just kind of this like buzzing happening. Um, but I want to talk just for a second longer about cortisol. So cortisol is one of our stress hormones. It's made by the adrenal glands, and it has many jobs in the body, but it helps our body manage longer term stress. So adrenaline is the stress hormone that comes in the very short term fight or flight kind of way. Excuse me. And then cortisol comes in for a more sustained stress response. Um, One of the other jobs of cortisol, other than helping to manage our stress, is literally just to wake us up in the morning. So there's a reason that chronic stress and sleep disturbances often go hand in hand. And I want to share my screen for a second and just show some of the common like cortisol waves that I see happening with people. So share screen. Okay, so this is a very, sorry, let me get this a little bigger. Can I? Yes. Okay. So, whoops. The blue line here, these are why I like this graph is because it's extremely oversimplified and so it's easy to visualize. But the blue line is kind of what cortisol does in a healthy person without chronic stress issues that are messing with their cortisol levels. It's like it has this kind of gentle rise in the morning and a midday it starts to come down. So there's often this like post-lunch kind of lowering of our energy. And then at night, cortisol is low enough and we're able to fall asleep. So the orange is showing some of the irregular cortisol curves. So what we see in this image is that cortisol has spiked early in the morning. So instead of like waking up, to like the birds chirping and the sun shining through your window, like we all wake up every morning, cortisol spikes and you wake up. And oftentimes what's going on here is that people are waking up with a kind of like, I am fully awake. I'm ready to start my day. My brain is already halfway through my to-do list. Maybe I'm waking up with a racing heart, but it's like you go from like asleep to like fully awake very fast. So that's one of the ways we can see potentially there's cortisol disruption. This is another curve. So cortisol comes up and then it doesn't like have that nice drop off in the evening. So people are just awake and they're like, I'm really not tired, even though I know I should be going to bed. And then this last image, I see this a lot when like people will have no energy in the morning. They wake up, they're exhausted, they're just like slogging through the first half of the day. And then like kind of around dinner time, after dinner, they're like, oh my gosh, I find like, here's my energy that I've been waiting for all day. And they finally feel it. Um, so, and then it's hard to go to sleep because you're like, I feel great now. So I just wanted to show a couple versions of like what potentially can happen when our cortisol gets disrupted. I'm gonna stop sharing and get my notes up again. Okay. So, there are lots and lots of things we can do to support our sleep. And I want to start with daytime support because I think this is a place that we don't think that much about like supporting sleep during the day, but that is a place we can really make a lot of difference. I remember learning, like being in a class about sleep one time, and the teacher was like, good sleep starts first thing in the morning. And I was like, right, okay, I love thinking about it that way. One of the things that you can do is go outside first thing in the morning and check out the daylight. Like really like let yourself step outside within a few minutes of waking up and just take in the daylight. What that's doing is helping to regulate the circadian rhythm. So many of our biological processes are on this kind of 24-hour clock that goes with the sun. And specifically helping to regulate sleep is our pineal gland, which is a tiny pine cone shaped gland, like about right here. And if we step outside first thing in the morning, our pineal gland's like, ding, this is when we're starting our cycle. So it helps to like entrain us within this 24-hour rhythm. Some of the other things that you can do to help your circadian rhythms are eat food around the same time each day. get some exercise around the same time each day, and go to bed and wake up around the same time each day. Any rhythm, any rhythm at all that you can offer your body is going to be a good thing for getting better sleep. Our body really, really wants to know what's coming. It really just does so well with rhythm. And there's a lot of reasons that can be hard in our modern life, with work and responsibilities and just like general life chaos. But the more you can offer your body some rhythm, the more your body's like, I know it's coming. I like prepared the hormones to help me wind down at night because I always go to sleep around 11 p.m. or whatever it is. So, rhythm, stepping outside first thing in the morning. Another thing that can be really helpful first thing in the morning is to have some protein for breakfast. Um, Getting like 75, 80% of your protein within the first half of your day, so at breakfast and lunch, can really help you get deeper sleep. A lot of people are not hungry first thing in the morning, and that is something you can kind of retrain your body to be. So if you're not hungry first thing in the morning, first, just start with having some warm water with a little bit of lemon juice. And over a couple of weeks, build up to like having a little snack. Maybe it's like a little bit of yogurt or, um, I think when people are not already eating breakfast, I recommend expand your idea of breakfast. Like breakfast can be soup or broth, or, I had like tofu and broccoli this morning for breakfast. So it can really look a lot of different ways, but getting protein first thing in the morning can really help. Um, and getting some gentle exercise. There's like really interesting research about specifically like getting exercise around 3 p.m., which for a lot of people is just like not totally doable. But, if you can get some gentle movement in the middle of your day, that's awesome. Even if it's just like a 20-minute walk on your lunch break, that will make a difference. Um, and the research about sleep and exercise is like 20 minutes of gentle movement. It's not like you have to like do cardio 5 days a week or something. It's just like get the blood flowing, get moving a little bit. Um, so stimulants, coffee, you know, obviously coffee makes it harder to sleep for most people, caffeine in general. And a lot of people will find that just like stopping coffee by noon can make a big difference. So no stimulants in the afternoon if you're having trouble sleeping. I remember a friend of mine was like really in a bad bout of insomnia, and we had dinner together, and then she was like, got out coffee ice cream. And I was like, Madeline, like there's caffeine in your dessert that you're eating at 8 p.m. She was like, oh, anyway. So no stimulants in the afternoon. Um, Alcohol makes it hard to get a good restful sleep. And the research is that red wine seems to be the worst, and vodka seems to be the least impactful for sleep. So, it's it's great if you're not having alcohol before bed, but if that is part of your life already and you're like, want to make an informed choice, like vodka probably is a better fit than red wine. Um, okay, the other really big thing we can do during the day is support your nervous system. Sleep happens as part of the sort of the branch of the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the branch of the nervous system that is more responsible for rest and digest. And we have the sympathetic, which is fight or flight. It's a lot more complicated than that, but to oversimplify, what we're trying to do during the daytime, if there's trouble sleeping, is support the parasympathetic nervous system. So I'll talk some more about herbs that are like non-sedating but calming to the nervous system. But having daytime herbs is almost always a strategy that I'm using for people who are having trouble sleeping. It's usually like it for some people, it's enough to just like take some herbs right before bed and fall asleep. But for most people, having herbs during the day will make falling asleep and staying asleep much easier. The last thing I want to say about daytime stuff is that if you are up in the middle of the night or if you're having trouble falling asleep, it's useful to look at what's the emotional pattern happening. Is there a lot of fear? Is there a lot of worry? Is there a lot of anger, irritation? Because oftentimes, in order to get really good quality sleep, we need to address those emotions. And we have way more like emotional bandwidth during the daytime. So dealing with some of those emotions during the day is going to go a lot better than like, spiraling through it at 2 o'clock in the morning. Um, okay, evening time. So what can we do before bed? Most people need between 90 and 120 minutes to go from like daytime activities to being asleep. That's a lot of time. If you've ever put a toddler to bed or a little kid to bed, like, guess what? Adults love all of those things. And I'm going to talk about some of the specifics, but like, I love talking to parents with young kids because I'm like, oh, all the things that you're doing for your kid, like, can you try doing that for yourself? I'm pretty sure you'll get a better sleep. So having some bedtime routines is really, really important. And part of what's going on here is kind of back to this rhythm thing. Our body, in order to shift from daytime kind of hormones and neurotransmitters and all of that stuff, metabolism into, night mode, our body really looks for external cues. So the more that we can make our environment like night mode, the more our body is going to understand we're going to bed. So one of the most impactful things you can do is switch your lighting. So no overhead lighting 2 hours before bed, lamps, low lighting, just like turning the volume down if you're watching TV or listening to music or podcasts. Just, yeah, like letting all of the sensory inputs be more calm. Some people find it really helpful to light a little bit of incense an hour or so before bed because that can be almost like a Pavlov's dog. It's like that can be one of the things that your body's like, oh, here's the incense. Okay, we're making a shift to nighttime. Um, if you don't have a bedtime routine yet, or you have a kind of like, yeah, I brush my teeth and that's it. I recommend having a kind of like two bedtime routines. One is long and luxurious, and you have a full 2 hours to like go from daytime to sleep. And the other is like, I got home late, I'm tired, I'm going to bed soon. Like you have maybe a half an hour or 15 minutes or something. Um, One of the other really helpful things that you can add to your bedtime routine if it's not already part of it is a shower or a bath. Some way to really change your temperature. One of the things that happens as we shift into night mode is that the body changes temperature. And so you I think our temperature turns down about 1 degree Fahrenheit, which is part of why we need to sleep under covers because like things are just turning down. And if we can get our body to do that kind of metabolic shift if we take a shower or a bath that's like the recommendation is actually to do a more neutral temperature, so something that's kind of warm but not like super super hot or obviously not cold. But yeah, a shower or a bath, especially by candlelight, like come on, that's just so nice. Um, and then the other thing I just want to talk about for a second is like screens, because I think there's a lot of like, you shouldn't have a screen before bed. And I'm kind of like, yes, I understand like the science behind that. And also it's like it's helpful for a lot of people. So if you are using a screen before bed to watch TV or listen to stories or whatever, like just please have the content be boring, soothing, calming, no Game of Thrones, no like horror stories, just chill, like videos of cats and ducks or what, like just chill stuff. There's a lot of podcasts that are like people reading bedtime stories where, not much happens and you're just like think about the content, I think is the point I'm trying to make. And if you are using screens later at night, there are glasses that have they're called blue blockers, and they can block the kind of light that seems to be the most stimulating to the pineal gland. Um, so there's a recommendation for sleep casts, um, worth the app subscription. Cool, thanks, in the Headspace app. Um, just a couple other quick things about like what's called sleep hygiene. It's make sure your room that you're sleeping in is dark and cool. That makes a big difference. You want the bed to be comfortable. There's not a lot of distractions. There's interesting research about like how cluttered or not the room is. So having that space where you're sleeping be like energetically peaceful. Um, and doing a massage with oil on your hands, your feet, and your head and neck can also be really nice. Um, and then the last evening thing that I want to mention is um, snacks. So there's a lot of stuff about like, don't eat before bed, because for some people it will cause acid reflux. So if that's you, it's probably a good idea to not eat too close to bed. But what I see happening a lot, especially when there's chronic stress and people are having trouble feeding themselves, is that there's like not quite enough food in the last couple hours of the day. Maybe you didn't get enough calories that day overall, and then your blood sugar dips in the night. And when our blood sugar gets low, one of the other jobs of cortisol is to come in and increase our blood sugar. That's just, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that it does, and that's one of it. So if you wake up in the night and you're hungry, please have a snack before bed. It's helpful to have some protein and fat. So cheese and crackers, apples and peanut butter, yogurt, like it doesn't have to be a big thing, but if you, this seems to happen more if people haven't like skipped dinner or haven't had enough calories throughout the day. So a snack before bed it can be for some people, it's just the thing that makes a difference between like sleeping all the way through the night. I haven't seen it have much benefit for people to actually fall asleep. This is more if you're waking up in the night or waking up too early. Oh, okay. And then there's a recommendation here about filtering the blue light out of the screens in the device settings. Thank you, technology wizard. That is not me. Um, okay, we're moving on to herbs. I don't start with herbs because there's actually so much more we can do that most of us are like, kind of do some of that. Maybe I knew a little bit of that, but like I said, the more, put yourself to bed like you're a toddler, like take a nice bath, have a few stories, get someone to rub your back, sing you a song. All right, herbs. So all of the herbs that I'm going to talk about in this class are safe to take alongside pharmaceuticals. A lot of the herbs that we're going to talk about are more sedative. They're for sleep. And sedative herbs and sedative drugs can have what's called an additive effect, which is basically the herbs and the drugs are trying to do the same thing. So pharmaceuticals that are addressing sleep, anxiety, muscle pain, depression, psychosis, all of those can have an additive effect with some of these herbs. It doesn't mean it's dangerous. It just means that if you are on pharmaceuticals, you want to talk to your doctor and a knowledgeable herbalist. And you probably just want to start with a slow, low dose. There's no, like, it's better to just have a low dose of the herbs and have nothing happen than take too much and be like, wow, I felt really like tired and out of it. That's for most of these herbs, if you take too much, you are sleepy. So we're going for sleep. That's usually not a big issue here. But it can be helpful to start with, like, I'll talk about dosing in just a sec, but it can be helpful to start with like a half dose of some of the herbs. If you are newer to herbs or if you are taking any medications. And then in the handout that you'll get, there, I put a note about the safety as far as pregnancy and lactation. In general, it's unrecommended to take any new herbs in the first trimester. So the note that you see is assuming the second and third trimester. So just note the safety about that if you are pregnant or wanting to be pregnant or nursing. Okay, a little bit more about dosing. So if you've never taken herb, like a new herb or any herbs, it's great to just try a tiny bit and see what happens. The herbs that I chose to talk about in this class are very safe. They're very well tolerated. And as herbalists, we get trained about idiosyncratic reactions, which is just like, for most people, it's safe. And for that person, they just like something weird happened. You know, part of my like lifelong mission is to get people to feel more comfortable about taking herbs and just trusting that they are safe. But it's a great idea to just start slow. So if you are taking a tincture, which is an alcohol extract, usually in a bottle like this, a liquid, you know, taking like maybe one squirt would be a good, safe place to start. If it's tea, like half a cup of tea. And if there's nothing weird that happens, you can increase your dose. What I find is that for most people who are like, I don't know if the herbs are working, they're really just using way too low of a dose. That's the main issue I see with herbs and efficacy, is that people just aren't taking enough. And especially with sleep, what I see is that if you're really struggling with sleep and you start taking herbs, I tell people, like, take the full dose once you have established, like, yes, these are herbs that feel totally fine or neutral or good in my body. Take the full dose for every night for a couple of weeks. And then as your body kind of gets back into a rhythm, you're able usually to decrease the dose. Sometimes people are, because sleep medications and pharmaceuticals for sleep can be habit forming and have a lot of side effects. People are often nervous about herbs for sleep, and they're just way gentler. There's not a concern about habit forming. And you can, what I see is actually they're the opposite, is that you take a lot for as long as you need, whether that's a couple of weeks or a couple of months, usually not a couple of months even, and then you're getting to like lower the dose because you just don't really need it to fall asleep. And then you have these herbs on hand as backup in case you're going through finals week or like whatever, like there's a period where things are hectic and you're needing that support again. Okay, usually for sleep, I'm reaching more for tincture instead of tea as far as herbal forms. Um, the reason for that is just because tea, I don't want people to have to get up and pee in the night. Tea, a lot of people love tea, especially for sleep. It's great. Please keep doing that if you are like into your nighttime tea. But you can also, another benefit of tincture is you're not getting up to pee, and you also can take a much higher dose without having to take like a lot more liquid. So the dosing that I'm usually recommending for a tincture, and the tinctures in my apothecary are a blend of the herbs, some alcohol, and water. Um, it's very low alcohol. Like this whole bottle is not even one shot of alcohol. Um, so the total dose that I'm recommending before bed is uh, about the same alcohol content as a ripe banana. So, there's reasons, a lot of reasons people just abstain from alcohol totally, but if you're sensitive to alcohol or just kind of like, oh, I don't know, like I just want to reassure people that this is not very much alcohol. If you're sober or for religious reasons or medical reasons you don't do it, then there are glycerates, which are a non-alcoholic kind of liquid herbal form that you can take like this. But so dosing, okay, let's say you want to go to bed at 10 p.m. You want to be asleep. I want you to start taking the herbs an hour and a half before sleep. So 90 minutes before you go to bed, I am recommending half a teaspoon of tincture. So that's about 2 droppers. A lot of herbal bottles will say droppers, which is just an unfortunate measurement because the dropper is this part. You can't actually fill it up all the way. Um, and different droppers are different size on different bottles. Like this 2-ounce bottle has a bigger dropper. But dropper is oftentimes actually talking about 20 drops. So I like to use teaspoons because we can actually measure that. So it's a half teaspoon at 8:30, a half teaspoon at 9, a half teaspoon at 9:30, and a half teaspoon at 10. So by the time you're hitting the pillow, you've taken 4 doses of herbs. This is also a really nice way to kind of help yourself structure a little bit more time before bed. So if you're kind of like running around and then you just like fly into bed and crash, um, a lot of people can fall asleep just fine. And so they're like, it doesn't make sense to take herbs before bed, because I'm just sleeping, but then I wake up. Um, I still think it's helpful to take the herbs before you fall asleep, because if you're waking up in the middle of the night or if you're waking up too early in the morning, that is often a sign that you haven't gotten into a very deep sleep or you haven't gotten into that rhythm. And so using the herbs in that kind of wind down period will help you get into that rhythm a little bit more. If you're waking up in the night and you're waking up um, too early in the morning, those are 2 good indications that you might want to try some adaptogenic herbs. We'll talk about adaptogens at the end, but there's like a whole other category because that's more often a sign of chronic stress than it is of just like worry and stress built up throughout the day. Okay, so my absolute favorite herbs for sleep are passion flower and skullcap. Passion flower, if you have never seen passion flower before, it's a vine, and it has, as a lot of vines do, it has these tiny little tendrils that curl around to kind of grasp so that the plant can grow. Yes, that is maypop. Passiflora incarnata. Thank you. Also called maypop. Um, so passion flower is very specifically indicated for that kind of circling thought, just like those little curling tendrils on the vine. So this is a great remedy for people who are having trouble falling asleep because their mind is just going like this, or they wake up and their mind is going like this. Passion flower is, hold on, let me just check this safety. It's not safe in pregnancy, and there's not evidence for lactation. I will say about just a quick note about my safety about pregnancy and lactation. I'm very cautious, and there are midwives who are much more knowledgeable about the herbal stuff than I am in that time of your life. So, if an herbalist, if a midwife is like, no, you can do passion flower while you're nursing, I would listen to the midwife, and I just am really err on the side of caution for that. Partially because I see little babies and I'm like, oh my God, we can't like, yeah, anyway, I just feel protective. Passion flower is also antispasmodic, and that can be helpful for pain. So many of the sleep herbs, actually, I think every single herb that I'm about to talk about is antispasmodic. Because like to me, one of the cool things about herbs is that they affect multiple body systems usually. And so if there's an herb that's kind of bringing our nervous system down, that tends to bring a lot of other systems like downshifting. So if there's muscles that are really tense, an antispasmodic sedative will help to ease those muscles. Um, Skullcap. Skullcap is one of my other absolute favorites. This might be my personal favorite sleep herb, and just like daytime, skullcap in my tea, skullcap in my tincture. Like I'm just a huge fan of skullcap. Both passion flower and skullcap have a mild taste, and I learned from the herbalist Paul Bergner. There's a cool lecture of his that you can find on a podcast called Herb Rally. I think it's called he did a lecture about herbal pairings, and he talks about skullcap and passion flower being greater than the sum of their parts. So it's like they actually have very similar actions. They're both calming to the nervous system. They're sedative and if taken in higher doses at night. And when used together, they seem to be stronger than either one of them alone. Skullcap is very specific for, one of my teachers taught me nervous pickers. So people who are kind of like picking at their skin or just like a little twitchy or like, you know, that kind of like, there's like a low key, like moving around all the time, nail biters, like a lot of spasmodic stuff. That would be a great indication for skullcap. And the other just like great calming sedative is chamomile. I think that chamomile is underestimated. I think that chamomile is super powerful, and I have seen a lot of people be like, whoa, like chamomile is just, yeah, I think to me it's like this herb that you can just like get at the diner, and it's super common. We don't think I think, yeah, we don't think much of it often, but it is very powerful if taken in higher doses for sleep. It's great for kids. The main caution with chamomile is that if you're someone who has really bad aster allergies, it is in the aster family, and I have had people who the main symptom is that people will get a kind of itchy mouth if they take it, or I've seen people like have a little bit of swelling in their lips, which stops when you stop taking the chamomile. But my main like sleep tincture blend is chamomile, passion flower, skullcap, equal parts. And why I do all three is for the passion flower skullcap combo, but then both of those are like the taste is pretty bitter and just like flat. And I want something aromatic. So chamomile has this kind of like, it has a nice floral smell. It has the aromatic quality, which if you picture smelling a flower or an herb that you really like the smell of, or even like someone's cooking, like there's a kind of like our nervous system does this thing where we kind of raise up and then relax even further. So I love to make sure that there is a aromatic herb as part of a sleep formula. Two other sedative herbs that I use for sleep sometimes are valerian and hops. Valerian and hops both have a little bit more caution that I want to talk about. They're in tons and tons of sleep blends. They're very safe. But what I've seen is that valerian and hops both will they're strong enough that sometimes they will give people almost like this kind of grogginess in the morning. And if you're already having trouble sleeping, I just don't want you to have any more grogginess in the morning. Um, it seems like you need to use them in higher doses for that to happen. Valerian is very just tried and true. It really works for like 90% of people to just get them to sleep. But 10% of people are what we call opposite responders. So instead of feeling calm from valerian, they actually feel awake. Oftentimes they'll feel not just alert and awake, but sort of agitated, irritable, a little bit like, I don't like that. So if you've never taken valerian, I recommend trying it in the daytime before just dosing yourself up at night in case you happen to be an opposite responder. And what I've seen for the opposite responders is most of those people tend to be kind of people who are run a little bit hot. So they're hotter than other people around. They might have a t-shirt on when everyone else has on a sweatshirt or a sweater. Um, so that's valerian. And then hops is what's in beer. Um, hops can be super sedating. It's very effective. It can make people groggy, as I said, and it also both valerian and hops, if taken long term, have the potential to exacerbate depression because they're that sedative. So if you are someone who lives with depression, I'm not worried about you using valerian and hops occasionally, but they're probably not a great fit for like an every single night for like 2 months kind of sleep herb. So if people are not getting the effects that they want from passion flower, skullcap, chamomile, then I'll add a little bit of valerian and hops, but it's not usually where I start because I just find that they have some potential, I don't want to say side effects, but maybe that's what the grogginess is, a side effect. Okay, a couple non-sedative daytime nervous system supportive herbs. And I picked these three. There's so many I could have listed, but I picked these three because they actually could all be used in higher doses at nighttime. Um, the same goes with skullcap, passion flower, chamomile. Those are all herbs you can use during the day and then just take higher doses at night. But the lemon balm, motherwort, and blue vervain that I'm going to talk about don't seem to be sedating for people during the daytime at all. Taken in higher doses, especially in combination with a passion flower, a skullcap, a chamomile, they can be good sleep aids depending on what's going on. So lemon balm is just so lovely. It's one of the first herbs that I try if the sleep issues are combined with anxiety, depression, kind of like upset stomach, like nervous stomach ache kind of issues. Um, it's if you've ever seen bees pollinating lemon balm, it's like the bees are like really hyper and like super buzzing around the lemon balm. And I think when people are like that and they just like cannot find a second to sit down and rest. And I'm like, you're a lemon balm person. So yeah, lemon balm is a really good nervous system support during the day. Motherwort is awesome for daytime. Um, I tend to choose lemon balm for people who are more irritable, frustrated, like short fuse. It also has a lot of affinity to the heart, emotional and physical heart. So if there is heart palpitations, racing heart, if there's heartbreak or heartache or grief, motherwort can be a good addition. It's very bitter, so it's not, I don't generally give it to people in tea just because of the taste. And I would say the same thing about blue vervain. Blue vervain is a non-sedative, calming nervous system herb that is very specific to the musculoskeletal system up in the neck and shoulders. So for people who are walking around like just kind of tense and there's like a lot happening, I think about like the word tight ass comes to mind when I think about blue vervain. It's just like there's a lot of this. Um, Blue vervain might be a good herb to try. It's super, super bitter, so probably best to try it as a tincture or as a glycerin rather than as a tea. Although, if you're into like punishing yourself, uh, you could try the tea. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about before we have some time for questions are the adaptogens. So adaptogens are a category of herbs that is, in the last few years, has become like wildly popular and misunderstood, and I just want to like set the record straight. So adaptogens are herbs that there's a couple definitions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they have to affect multiple body systems. So these are not just herbs that we can use for chronic stress and to regulate our stress hormone patterns, but they're also great herbs for supporting kidney and liver and immune function and digestive function. Like they do so much more, but how a lot of people talk about adaptogens is just like, we got to re-regulate our stress response. And I want to, as an herbalist, say they do a lot. The adaptogens are herbs that need to be taken on a longer term basis. They don't seem to have much effect just taken like as needed. These would be the herbs that you would want to lean on if you do have signs of chronic stress. You're waking up in the middle of the night, you're waking up too early in the morning, you are like wired and tired, like you're so exhausted that you can't fall asleep. You have one of those kind of cortisol patterns where cortisol is just way high in the evening, or spiking early in the morning. For most people, you're not going to be seeing an effect from adaptogens for at least 4 weeks and most likely 8 weeks. So they're slow to work because they're acting on a really deep level in the body. And in general, you get the most benefit out of taking them for 4 to 6 months at a time. So they're not herbs to just like, I'm having a hard time sleeping, I'll take ashwagandha tonight. It's like you just commit to taking them for a while, and they do usually require a little bit of trust because you're not going to see, sometimes people will notice a change quickly, but usually you're just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna just believe that these herbs will eventually change things. Which is part of what I think herbs are cool in, that they kind of require us to pay a little bit more attention. But the herbs that I chose, the adaptogens that seem to have the most affinity to sleep issues, a big one is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, I know about it from Ayurvedic medicine. It grows in North Africa and India, and the second word of the Latin name is somnifera. And somnifera is sort of the same root as somniferous, which basically means something that makes you sleepy. So it's like it was named knowing that this is an herb that can help people sleep. The best ways to take it, there's a lot of ways to take it. In Ayurvedic medicine, it tends to be more traditionally given before bed in like a warm cup of milk. And that's because some of the constituents are fat soluble. So if you want to do a tea with ashwagandha, um, it's a root, so it needs to be simmered a little bit, which is a little bit more work as far as making tea goes, and a little bit of fat needs to be added. So any kind of milk or tincture is another good way to get a good dose of ashwagandha. Um, Yeah, that's the main one that people associate with sleep. And it's also, I've seen a lot of people have like feel a little bit irritated from ashwagandha, like emotionally. It can be a little bit stimulating sometimes for people. So if you find that's true, you can reduce your dose or you can just try a different adaptogen. The next one that I wanted to mention is reishi mushroom. So reishi, I know about from TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. Reishi is considered very calming and building. If you've ever been in a place where reishi grows, it basically grows in like very it's like they grow in some of my favorite places. It's like this kind of forest ecosystem that has a very dense overstory and not much on the forest floor. So it's like a place where you can walk around really easily, and it's like it's quiet, it's dark. Like I think reishi kind of gives the feeling of what is often needed to fall asleep. It's anti-inflammatory. It's, excuse me, great for the immune system. So I, excuse me, uh-oh, use it for people with autoimmune conditions. My voice is like, stop talking. One more herb, please. The last herb I want to mention is eleuthero. Eleuthero is an adaptogen I use often for people who are depressed, exhausted, or athletes. Like people who are super active physically. Um, yeah, it seems to be an adaptogen that does not have a lot of it's very well tolerated, I'll say. I haven't seen people have problems with eleuthero. Okay, I'm gonna pause there. That's all of the information. I'm talking at you, and just see if people have questions. You're welcome to come off mute or put something in the chat, and I'm happy to I don't know if questions will go over time, but I'm happy to just stay and answer questions for a bit. So please let me know what you got. Yeah, how do you're Sankofa Healing Studio. Please come off mute. I'm like, how do I call on you? There's probably a good Zoom way, but
Um, I never changed the name. But my name's Selena. I actually took a training before with you, Kelly, when I was very preggo in the summertime. So thank you for that, and thank you for tonight. My question is about people who are, which is myself, night owls. Like, do you think night owl is a real thing, or is it an imbalance? Because that's
yeah.
my drive time, but
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah, right. I've had this question. I wonder the same thing. And the part of me that like understands, basically I believe that night owl is a thing, and I don't think it's inherently bad. Um, I think the reasons that it can be troublesome is because of life under capitalism, that you have to like get up and go to work. Um, Not because there's some pretty interesting theories about like night owls and kind of the role that they would have had in a community. Um, I just have talked with many clients and friends who are like, that is when I thrive. So I encourage you to like let yourself do that as much as it's works for you. You know, I think it's about finding a balance to figure out like for you what's possible. Can you stay up late and have your creative time or get your stuff done and still like be present in the day with the responsibilities that you need to be present with? Um, yeah, it's a tricky one, but I'm like, it's not an inherent problem. It's only a problem because it is a problem. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question here about chronotypes. I don't even know what a chronotype is. So sorry, I can't speak to that. Um, can you speak on licorice for cortisol imbalance to help with sleep disturbed? Yeah, so I love licorice, and actually I almost put it in this um little class, but licorice has enough contraindications and safety considerations that I was like, there's a lot of people signed up. I'm gonna just leave it with the most super safe herbs. But I do oftentimes, if it's a good fit for somebody, how I'll use licorice to help with cortisol rebalancing is I'll have people take licorice, 1 teaspoon of tincture first thing in the morning. So within an hour of waking up, that's when our cortisol is kind of rising and getting, so licorice specifically for folks who don't know, interacts with our cortisol receptors and helps our body get signaling that we don't actually need to produce as much, which can be a good thing. Licorice, safety wise, interacts with diuretic. It can interact with diuretic medications, heart medications. It can increase blood pressure, so it can be, you need to be careful if there's any kind of high blood pressure. So it's definitely one to make sure that it's a good fit for you, but it can be a really great like adaptogenic herb to help with that chronic stress. Um, Dosing recommendations for reishi, and yes, in the handout there's dosage recommendations for the adaptogens, but I'll just say it here. In general, we're going for about 5 grams per day. So that can look like 3 milliliters of a tincture 3 times a day is kind of a good medium place to start. There's math people do to figure out exactly how many grams are in the tincture and how much should I take. But in general, 2 to 3 droppers 3 times a day, or like a half teaspoon 3 times a day, is a good place to start for reishi. You can safely go much higher with reishi, but you know, we're not talking a ton about dosing in this class, but basically we're going for the lowest effective dose. So if you don't need to take a lot, you don't have to. Um, I offer tinctures. The other question is, I wonder if you offer your own tinctures online. I have a kind of like word of mouth apothecary. So I actually I'm in my apothecary. I can just show you. I have a big old wall full of tinctures. I do sell tinctures, but pretty much only to clients or to like friends of clients or friends of friends or you, someone who's taken a class. you're welcome to email me and just be like, can I try a sleep tincture? Sure. Or can I try a sleep tea? Sure. I ship all of my herbs. I fill orders once a week. I don't have like a product line, or like you can't go on my website and like order this or that. But I love I have a sliding scale for my herbs, and I'm very happy to get people sleep sleep herbs or other herbs, adaptogens, nervines. I love formulating for people. So just send me an email, atticapothecary@gmail, and we can get some stuff set up. Any other questions? Yeah, I see you.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Kira.
Hi.
Um, Thanks so much, Kelly. That was a really great, so much pieces to take away. My question is regarding waking up in the middle of the night, and protocols and practices and things that we can be doing when you do wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. I know that like that's what's happening for me right now, and it's the first time. And I know why, but I'm having like difficulty knowing what to do in that funny space where I know I need to sleep more, and I usually do get to sleep, but there's like sometimes 3 hours or an hour where I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm laying awake in bed, and just wondering if you had any yeah, pieces of advice regarding that. Thanks.
I'm so glad you asked that question because I do have a very helpful thing that I forgot to say, which is if you're waking up in the middle of the night, put a glass of water next to your bed with like 1 or 2 ounces of water and a whole teaspoon of a sleep tincture or a sleep glycerate, a concentrated liquid extract of herbs. And as soon as you wake up, regardless of if you're like, maybe I can fall back asleep or I don't know, just take it. Because part of what we want to do is interrupt that cycle that the body's like, we just wake up now. It's like, shut that shit down. No, we do not. So you take an extra pretty big dose of the sleep tincture. That can be really helpful. And then, yeah, there's a lot of ideas about what else kind of non-herbal stuff can be done then. One of the main recommendation I tend to give people is if you're awake for more than like 20 minutes or so, get up, go to the couch, bring a boring book, maybe make some tea, like actually leave your bed and do a little something. Maybe you have some dishes to wash, like something boring. Um, so that you can come back to bed in a little bit and like kind of like do the thing where you're like, okay, body, we're going to sleep now. Look, we're like you change your temperature, you get back into bed. Um, Yeah, I mean, the also to, you said you know what's going on, which is great. And if it's not something that you have much control over, you can also plan to like go to bed an hour earlier. Not necessarily that you have to fall asleep an hour earlier, but just that you're actually spending a little bit more time in bed before sleep can be helpful to just get some extra rest for your body. A 20-minute nap in the afternoon can be helpful. There's different people have different attitudes about naps, but in general, I'm like, if you're really missing out on a lot of key sleep, 20 minutes is a fine nap to take. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Any particular tips for someone who's been managing insomnia 7 weeks in a row, seemingly out of nowhere? Okay, Taylor, I don't know you. I don't know how old you are, but whenever people are like, this is out of nowhere, I'm like, are you in your early 40s? Because perimenopause is I was gonna swear and I was like, anyway. Um it's a problem child. Perimenopause is a huge cause of sleep disturbances, and it can start for people in their in their late 30s. There can be some hormonal shifts that start to, so you're turning 35. So it's probably not perimenopause. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I mean, okay, one of the other things that actually I did not say in the sleep class is that I think one of the main things to when I am working with clients and they're struggling with sleep, I'm just like, you could be doing literally everything right, and sleep is still a mysterious, just it's a mysterious mistress that we actually don't get to control. And if you can kind of like, on one hand, support yourself as much as you can possibly can with all of the stuff we talked about in this class, and on the other hand, let it just be a mystery of the universe where you're like, I don't I don't get to control this. Like that can help, I think. Um, but more than a lot of other health things, it's just like it's bodies are weird and sometimes just weird things happen. So the sooner you give yourself some rhythm and routine and sleep support, 7 weeks is actually not that long to be dealing with insomnia. It probably feels like a long time for you, but um, as far as the scale of how useful and quickly herbs might work, I'm like, you're actually in a great place to start using herbs right away. Um, yeah, so hopefully that helps a little bit. Support for menopausal insomnia. It's exhausting. Oh, yes. I did some research. I'm teaching a class actually in a week from now about perimenopause. Um, so I would come to the class because there's a lot more. But basically, I've been doing a bunch of research on this, and it's all the recommendations are pretty much the same. With the caveat about night sweats and hot flashes, like plan for them to happen in the night. So, wearing light set of pajamas, having something to change into, like having multiple layers of blankets so you can take your blankets off. But a lot of the like herbal strategies are the same. The only other thing that I'll add is sage. Sage as a tea, more sage in your food. There's some cool research about sage capsules being specifically helpful for some of that vasomotor hot flashes, night sweats, which is often part of what's disturbing sleep for people in perimenopause and menopause. But the other stuff is the same. It's like take some calming herbs before bed, take some nervous system support during the day. Yeah. Yeah, 1 tablespoon of sleep tincture in water in the middle of the night for waking up. Yes. Okay, I'll take one more question if there is.
I have
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
I I was just gonna ask if you do any combining of valerian or hops, like with any of the other herbs you mentioned, or do you kind of keep them on their own because of the sedative effects, I guess? Or could
Yeah.
like lemon balm and hops balance out the sedative effect?
Yeah, totally. I do. Yeah, you pretty much what I'll do is I'll start with a kind of like passion flower, skullcap, lemon balm, chamomile, something like that. If that's not strong enough, then it depends on the person. For some people, they actually want them separate so they can like take higher doses of the valerian or hops. And for some people, we just combine them all into the same blend. Um, and I just talk to people about like you might want to just take a little less the first few nights and make sure you're not too groggy. But oftentimes, if the other herbs have not been strong enough, they're like so grateful to have passion flower, or excuse me, valerian or hops. And I end up using them more with people who are going through perimenopause because it's just a kind of rougher time for sleep in general. But yeah, you can combine them. And sometimes I will do just what you said, valerian and lemon balm together. That's a really nice kind of one-to-one combo if you're like, I want it a little bit stronger, but not too strong. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. Reach out via email if you have questions. Tomorrow I will send the handout with a bunch of notes and the recording of this. You can watch it again for the next 30 days. I have lots more classes coming up. I have some collective consultations. So if this resonated, take a peek at what else I'm doing. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. Have a good night.